You're listening to Let's Talk Episode 20, brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network. Howdy, all, and welcome to Let's Talk, our weekly or mostly weekly SQPN community podcast. We did miss last week because I was on retreat. Went at a marriage encounter retreat. Actually, I didn't have a marriage to encounter, but I was there at the retreat. So due to miscommunication, we didn't have a episode last week, but we're back this week.
Let's just say it. It was my fault.
No, I was trying not to cast blame. It was a mistake.
No, I'll take the fall for that.
But we're here again this week, and we've got a good episode. As you could hear, we got Dom Bentinelli is here to join us. How's it going, Dom?
Good, Father Corey. I'm glad that we're getting together for this episode of Let's Talk. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. We got another episode of another podcast we'll be recording later this week. We're also looking forward to with Doctor Who starting soon. We'll talk about that later.
Yep.
And then our special guest is Mike Dents from New York, Buffalo area, right?
That's correct. And I don't get to talk about Doctor Who?
You can if you want.
Yeah, we can talk about Doctor Who a little bit in this.
Well, that's all right. I mean, we could, but all right. When I heard that, I'm like, oh, I'm on the wrong podcast. No, I'm happy to be on this one. This is great.
Well, very good. Well, since you haven't been on the podcast, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Mike Dens. I graduated from Franciscan University, the best university ever. In 98. And was married a year later to my beautiful wife, Sue. We have one daughter, Maria, who's 18. And I've been working in church ministry, all sorts of different things. Parish work. I owned a Catholic bookstore for about 7 years. I've done pilgrimages to Rome and other parts of Italy, which I know we're going to talk about. And I currently work as the director of evangelization and catechesis at a parish in the Buffalo Diocese, Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish and Shrine.
Well, excellent. And we might talk about your work as doing catechesis and evangelization, because I know that's a very important thing in the church today. But we'll definitely talk about your pilgrimages and all that. And what's been going on with you, Dom?
Well, since the last time I've been on Let's Talk, I took a big road trip with my family. We took 11 days, 11 states, 2,500 miles, 7 of us in a van. The kids are ranging in age from 5 to 12. So it was a little scary trip. We went to from Boston we stayed with friends in Pittsburgh. We went to Steubenville, woohoo, where I haven't been back in 2 decades. And we stayed with some friends there, and I went to Drover's, which has the best hot wings anywhere. Mike,
outside of Buffalo.
Well, I have not yet been to Buffalo, so Mike has to invite me out so we can go to get some wings in Buffalo. But I hadn't had these wings in 20 years, and I was so excited to have them again. These were the best. So you can read all about it on my blog if you go to betnet.com. Maybe we'll put a link in the show notes to my story of the best, hottest wings I've ever had. It's a fun story. Nice. Read all about it there. And so anyway, we ended up in Kentucky, where my wife's family reunion was, which was great, a lot of fun, meeting her extended family. Then we came back through Nashville, the Great Smokies, which is beautiful national park. And then we drove up back through Virginia into to Pennsylvania, where we stayed overnight, and then back home again. So it was an amazing trip, and sort of a proof of concept for us that we could actually do it. So it was nice. A lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So.
Nice. Yeah, sounds kind of the classic family road trip, loading up the family truckster and going.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I had my my road playlist which included such classics as "Convoy" by C.W. McCall and others like that. I just said I had, and then any song that had the names Kentucky or Tennessee or anything. Also, lots of country music though, and bluegrass. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome.
Did you have the song from Vacation with Chevy Chase?
Holiday Road.
Oh, yeah. That.
Oh, you know it.
Gotta have it. For me, anytime I go on a long road trip, I gotta play "Eastbound and Down" by Jerry Reed.
It's since
Smokey and the Bandit.
Since the sad passing of Burt Reynolds, that's been on my mind, and so I had "Eastbound and Down" and "Westbound." So there's two versions of this: Eastbound and Westbound versions of that song. So when we're headed west, I would play "Westbound and Down," and then we're headed east, I'd play "Eastbound and Down." My wife does never want to hear those again. By the way, she's heard those enough. That's enough. But I got the soundtrack before we left of Smokey and the Bandit just so we could listen to it.
Nice. Yeah, as I mentioned, I was gone last week and that's why we didn't have a recording. I had a week of meetings.
Oh, fun.
We had our priest assembly or priest convocation, a lot of dioceses call it, in Great Falls. And it wasn't too bad. Actually, it was about financial management and fraud and things like that. And of course, as we're listening to it, it's like, okay, I've got a lot of work to do, to make sure that the money is accounted properly and that there's no chance for fraud and things like that. And it was interesting, but of course it was sitting in a conference room for 3 days. And then I had tribunal training, refresh on how to do annulment training or annulment work as an advocate, another day of sitting in a conference room. And then we had as I said, I did the marriage encounter retreat to sit in as a priest, which was very interesting. I would highly recommend for couples if they want to go deeper in their relationship. It's very much worth doing. For priests, it's a little awkward because you're kind of sharing. Yeah, it's a little different. But for couples, it's very highly recommended. And I would definitely recommend to any couples who they're in a good relationship, but they want to go deeper. It's not for couples who are relationship is struggling. Retrovi is a good retreat for that. Yep. But marriage encounter, I highly recommend it for couples. But again, 2 more days of sitting in a conference room as part of the retreat. So Sunday night through Wednesday, I met with my parents in Missoula, Montana. My parents live in Ellensburg, Washington now, and Missoula is the dead center between here and there.
Oh, wow.
So we gathered there and we ate and drank and had fun and relaxed and didn't sit in a conference room.
That sounds awesome.
So that's why I wasn't here last week, because I was off doing retreat stuff. Now, let's jump over to the reason why Mike is here. One thing you mentioned, Mike, is that you do a lot of work with pilgrimages. Let's kind of start with the basics of what is a pilgrimage? Why would you want to go on a pilgrimage?
Well, a pilgrimage is a microcosm of the spiritual life of a Christian. So you set out on a physical journey, which symbolizes your spiritual journey, with the destination being heaven, but the physical journey, your destination is a spiritual site, either the site of a great miracle, a city where great things have happened, the burial place of saints, an apparition site of the Blessed Mother, something like that. So, you go through the difficulty of getting there, the expense of getting there. And while this certainly isn't what they did hundreds of years ago when they had to walk much of the way and stuff, and we're flying, but that 8-hour flight over the Atlantic is no fun. So, I mean, that's, I guess, part of the suffering. And we hit the ground running because if you get a little bit of sleep on the plane, that's great, but basically you're exhausted because it feels like 3 in the morning with no sleep, and it's actually 9 in the morning, and we just go and we do the first day. So there's the suffering, but then there's the joy of arriving at the site, and the purpose of the pilgrimage is not just getting there, but the traveling to get there as well. So I mean, that's in a nutshell what a pilgrimage is. And of course they've been around for thousands of years, even before Christianity. Jews made pilgrimages to the temple every year, and so it's something with a great history.
Oh, very good. And having made that flight on a pilgrimage several times, that is very penitential to fly across the Atlantic.
Yeah. Depending on the movie selection on the plane, one way or the other. I mean, sometimes the movie selection can be penitential as well, but that's usually how I get through it. I'll sit through a couple of movies.
But the nice thing.
For someone who's as big as I am, 6'2" and something pounds. Sitting in those little coach class seats, breathing the stale air for 8 hours plus is not that great.
Yeah.
So, Mike, what's the difference between a pilgrimage and a vacation? Because people can go on vacation to these same places too.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time on my website ad nauseum trying to make sure we explain that this is not a vacation. This is a pilgrimage. They will enjoy themselves, but it is not a vacation. It is a pilgrimage is something where you're going there prayerfully. You're going there not to try to sit around and drink Mai Tais and enjoy yourself and go out to lavish dinners and and see the sights and do a lot of shopping and things like that. A pilgrimage is a religious experience, and the way the days usually go is you get up early, you have mass, and you walk or ride crowded public transportation to get to the different places we visit. This is not a great commercial for our pilgrimages at this point, but I mean it really is better than it sounds. And then you get to the sites and we pray, we go in, we experience the different things in the basilica or the church or the other site that we're visiting, and then we go on to the next one, and then we're kind of rewarded at the end of the day with a great meal in Rome, which is one of the best parts of going to Rome. Is besides all the great basilicas you get to see, is eating there. It's a lot different than a vacation.
Yeah, that's one of the key distinctions, pilgrimage versus vacation. I had the opportunity to go to the Holy Land twice now. First time was we basically lived there for 2.5, 3 months as part of our seminary. And so we got to know the people and got to know the culture and everything and really get to see it and experience it. And then I went back a second time as part of a traditional pilgrimage. And of course, I put that in quotes because how they do pilgrimages for a lot of packages really aren't very pilgrimage-like, like you described, because we would get up, we stay in these nice hotels, usually 3-star, 4-star, sometimes even 5-star hotels. You'd get up, you'd have a good meal, you'd get on this nice air-conditioned bus and go to the one site and do the tour, and you have a few minutes for prayer and or pictures, get on the bus, go to the next site, repeat, go to lunch. There wasn't a lot. It wasn't quite as prayerful as what I experienced the first time. Now, you'd mentioned Rome. Now, where do you usually take your pilgrimages to?
Italy is the central place, and Rome is, the main place we always go, and we usually stay in Rome the whole time. And that's one of there's several things about our pilgrimages, similar to some of the things you just mentioned, Father, that we wanted to make different than the big company, quote unquote pilgrimages. And I'm doing my air quotes for the podcast that makes it different. One of the things is, we don't stay in a nice hotel. We stay with religious sisters in one of their guest houses. There are a lot of them all over Rome, where religious sisters run guest houses to support their missionary work and to provide a place for pilgrims to stay. The standard thing you'll find at almost any one of these guest houses is it's inexpensive, it's amazingly clean, and it's run by sisters who are very sweet, usually from all over the place, not just Rome, and they have a chapel right there. So you have a place for Mass if you're not going to have Mass in one of the basilicas or churches. You have a place for Mass right there, or a place just to go and pray. Say Rosary in the evening or Vespers or whatever. And so that's one of the first things. And why pay all this money for a hotel that you're just going to sleep in? I mean, you need to go to Rome to experience this amazing hotel. You want to go and see Rome. We also stay there the whole time, so we're not packing and unpacking and moving to the next city. There's plenty to see in Rome, but we do day trips. Usually always Assisi is one of them. But we've also gone to Siena, Orvieto, Florence, Lucca. So, some places are a little further away than others, so it's a short day trip because by the time you get there, you only have a few hours to stay there. But Assisi and Orvieto and Siena are close enough where you can spend a good chunk of the day there. It only takes a couple hours to get there by train.
Oh, awesome. And what kind of groups do you take usually on these pilgrimages?
We started out just throwing out a date, we're going to go on these dates, whoever wants to sign up. And that worked well for a little while, but basically what it morphed into was parishes and high schools contacting us to do a pilgrimage for them. So all they have to do is advertise. And our website, you sign everybody up, it gives everybody the information. We take care of all the stuff, everything that there is to take care of, from the travel, the air travel, the ground travel, the reservations for things like the Vatican Museums and Sistine Chapel, the Ascavi tour. We have a guide. It was my wife and I for the bulk of the first several years we did this, but once we got back into getting regular jobs here in the Buffalo area, we use a guide that we found when we were there, who is an official Vatican guide. He does an excellent job. So we take care of everything. So all they have to, basically do is, pay for the fee and then get on the plane, and they're taken all the way through it.
Oh, excellent. So for someone who wants to go on a pilgrimage, whether it's with you or with another group, what would you recommend that they look for? Because I think there's a lot of people who have never taken pilgrimages. They're interested, if nothing else, just to see these places, to go to Rome, to go to Assisi, go to the Holy Land if they take that kind of trip. What would you recommend they look for when they're trying to find one?
Well, there's different things. It really depends on what they want. For instance, a lot of people have heard of like the Steve Ray or other pilgrimages where there's a Catholic celeb going on the trip as well. Those pilgrimages tend to be rather large. So you're going to be like maybe one of anywhere from 60 or 70 to over 100 people riding a trail of buses, and every once in a while you'll get to hear a little talk, or you'll get to meet the Catholic celeb as you go along the way. But it does kind of feel like a cattle herding. You're just, you're going with this huge group and you're following along. You might be wearing a headset the whole time, listening to whoever the leader is. So, those can be kind of a little impersonal in the sense that there's so many of you. But at the same time, they are also usually first class, which we just said, doesn't necessarily image the pilgrimage spirit. But nice buses, nice places they're staying. They usually sometimes they'll get a DVD of the whole thing. They'll have a professional videographer videoing everything, and then you get to pay for the DVD, or maybe it's included. And you get all that kind of bells and whistles, and those can be up there in that high $3,000 to $4,500 range pilgrimages. You can also, you might be wanting to look for something that is not a lot of walking, or you want to do the walking. Obviously, that depends on your ability. If you're someone who has, hip problems or, back problems or feet problems, arthritis, whatever, you want to make sure that there's not so much walking that you're going to have trouble getting around. A lot of these places, as you can imagine, in Rome and other very old cities, there's not a lot of handicap access everywhere. A lot of cobblestones, a lot of hills. So, you want to take in account, what kind of accommodations are they going to have for me if I can't get around real well for long walks or big steps or whatever that might come up. And that's one thing with our pilgrimages, is that you do have to be physically able to get around on your own. because we do a lot of walking, and we try to make that very clear with our pilgrimages. So those are some of the like specific things that you might want to look for in when choosing. What kind of experience are you looking for? At our pilgrimages, they can be anywhere from 15 to 30 some people that we have in each pilgrimage, which really kind of gives a nice intimate atmosphere. Everyone gets to know everybody. Everyone gets to enjoy each other's company, and so they're meeting other like-minded people who also are just so excited to be there. You create lifelong Facebook friends. Everyone kind of gets together afterwards, and so they enjoy that and eat together every night. And it's not that you're forced to eat together. That's another thing that we never do unless it's specifically requested by the group, is have them pay for dinners. We want them to go out and find a good place to eat, or come to one of our recommended places and order whatever they want off the menu and experiment and enjoy it, instead of everyone getting a plate with the same thing on it and everyone eats the same thing. That's like that. I can't stand that idea. No, I want to order my Amatriciano or my carbonara or something. I want to get what I want, not whatever they serve me.
It's nearly impossible to get a bad meal in Rome. You know what I mean? It's just go out and find a place and go eat.
Yeah, it really is. But there was one time when I got some bruschetta that clearly had whatever tomatoey stuff they put on top of it was in a can. I could taste it, and I was like, "You guys should be shut down. What is wrong with you?" It was, and that
call
was
the Carabinieri.
Yeah, really, this is terrible. There was, and I've had probably over 100 dinners in Rome, and all the times I've been there easily. And that was one time. I was like, "What is this?"
That's good.
Because one of the things about the meals in Rome, and we could do a whole podcast on that if you wanted to, is the freshness. You feel like they just picked the tomatoes out back and cut them up.
Right.
And
they probably did.
It really. Well, I know of my favorite restaurant. They have the basil right in this big pottery thing right there on the side of the road. Like you're eating outside, with the cars driving by, and I asked for basil, and the guy went over and picked some and gave it to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's pretty fresh. So yeah, it's that's the thing. That the real key to the food in Rome and really all of Italy is the freshness of the food, the fresh deliveries of everything. You're not getting anything that was frozen, not getting anything that was shipped from far away or grown or has a lot of pesticides. It's just really, really awesomely fresh, delicious food.
Here's my tip for when you go out to dinner in anywhere in Italy is to always to say to the waiter, what's good, what's fresh. Just bring, recommend, or just bring me something good. Whatever the chef thinks is good tonight, bring, because the chef knows what's good. The chef's inspired by whatever he saw in the market today. Right. I mean, some of my best meals, I've been to Rome a handful of times, but the best meals were always those ones where the guy would just go, "Here, try this. This is good today. Oh, right. Figs. This is a fig season. Try these figs." And like, oh my gosh, I've never had a fig before. What is this? Like, I've had figs, but they weren't this. I mean, just amazing food like that. That's always what I always say to people is just be open to the experience. Right. Try things. Just go out on a limb a bit.
Exactly. I mean, you'll be in restaurants, which we're not used to at all in the United States, them ever saying, "Oh, we don't have that right now. It's not in season." And you're like, "What? This is what I want." No, no, we don't. This is not in season. It's not fresh, so we won't serve it. It's that, we don't have. Some of them might have different menus, but usually it's just one big menu. And if you pick something out that's not in season, it's not in season. But to tell them, like, what did you get in today? What's the fish that you got in today, or whatever? Then that's Dom is exactly right. That's the kind of thing you want to do. And they also know, what they do really well. What is this thing that you guys really specialize in, and what do you recommend? And the waiters there are not somebody that's like working their way through college or is just a starving actor or something like that. These guys are professionals. These guys they get paid well. You don't tip them like you do in the United States. You give them a couple euro or something, but they don't expect some sort of large tip, because this is their professional job. I've known guys that are the same group of guys at different restaurants that have been there in the 6 years that I've been going, and they know what they're doing. They know how to serve. They know what the food is, and they speak English. It's very rare to find waiters that don't at least understand basic English, because that's their bread and butter. It's just us Americans coming over there. So a lot of people say, how much Italian do I have to know? And it's like, none. And if you know Spanish, don't think you're going to get by, because they get annoyed after a while if you keep speaking Spanish to them. It's similar, but not similar enough that you can really get away with it.
Yeah, Rome is a really big cosmopolitan city. I mean, it's lots. They're used to having people from all over the world. Yeah,
yeah. It's very English friendly. I'll go in and I'll be all ready to say buongiorno, and for some reason, unlike Dom, I don't look Italian, so they just say hello to me before I even get the words out, because I'm just a big fat white guy who looks very not Italian. It doesn't work.
You talked kind of about, when you go to a foreign place, and not just Rome, anywhere. This is kind of a rule of thumb I learned from my parents years ago. They went on a trip to Australia, cruise and tour and everything. And the first night they were there, they went down to the front desk and said, okay, we want to go get a drink. We want to go get a beer or a mixed drink or something. And if you were to go for a drink right now, where would you go? This is a local. This is somebody who's from that area. We don't want the touristy stuff. We don't want the chain bars. We want a place where we can meet locals. Say, oh yeah, go 2 blocks this way and go around the corner, and there's a great little pub there. And they had a blast. Mm-hmm. But any of this, where you go these places, you don't go to the McDonald's. You don't go to the
Italian
chains. Yeah. You go find the little niche hole-in-the-wall restaurant that's got the awesome food and the great drinks, and you experience the culture. It's so much more rewarding, especially on a pilgrimage, to do something like that.
Yeah, it's always great to be able to find a place that's not touristy, that's off the beaten path. We were in Trastevere, which is a part of Rome that's on the western side of the Tiber. Most of the walled-in side of Rome is east of the Tiber. It's about 3 square miles of Rome. But with the west of the Tiber, you have the Vatican, and then south of the Vatican is this area called Trastevere, which is actually the original Jewish ghetto, the original where the Jews were in Rome. And it's very preserved in how beautiful the buildings are. It has a nightlife. Not a lot of Rome, depending on where you are. Some of Rome is kind of a nightlife. Trastevere does. But we were there visiting Santa Maria in Trastevere, a beautiful church that's in the middle of the area. And it was lunchtime, and we were just blessed enough to run into a student who told us a sandwich place to go to. And this guy was slicing the bread, slicing the prosciutto, slicing the everything, putting it all together in this amazingly fresh sandwich, and charging you like €2.50 for it. And you're like, oh my gosh, this would be like $10 at home, and it wouldn't be half as good. It was just one of the amazing things. So, yeah, if you can find a place where they don't speak English and there's a bunch of old Italian guys looking at you strangely like, why are you here? You're in the right place.
Exactly.
But as Dom said before, you can't trip and fall down and not land in the best restaurant you've ever eaten in Rome. They're just all so good, as long as you avoid that one place with the bad prosciutto that I mentioned. But otherwise, they're all pretty good.
There's a spiritual component to this part of the conversation we're having about going to get a good meal and seeing the real place, because part of pilgrimage, from my point of view, and you can tell me whether I'm on the right track or not, is about also connecting with people and culture and the place. It's not just the historical place and the buildings, but you're also encountering people and cultures that are connected to the spiritual realities that you're going for, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm saying that clear enough. So, but maybe you could elucidate on that.
Yeah, I mean, the food is a big part of their culture, and they. One of the things that I'm sure Dom knows very well is they don't take kindly to you not finishing your plate. They want you to. You need to eat. They're very happy to see you enjoying your meal and complimenting their meal. and you also besides getting to meet the people, the waiters and maybe the owner comes out, to talk to you or something like that. But you also get to sit around with your fellow pilgrims and talk about the day. What did you like to see? What kind of experience did you have? What was your favorite place we saw today? And you get these stories and you start exchanging them all. So it's a key part of the day. If you sometimes people, and I understand, but sometimes people would come and they would have bought like granola bars or other things from home because they're trying to really go on a budget and not eat, the food there. And it's just like, let me buy you a dinner or something. I don't know. You can't miss out on the meal. You can't go to Rome and not eat the food there. It's just, such a huge part of it. But also the whole cultural aspect. It's so different. I mean, we go to a restaurant here in the United States and they're like, okay, it's a 30-minute wait. Here's a beeper. In Rome, you go out to eat and they bring out a table from the back and set it up outside somewhere on the street, throw a tablecloth over it and give you 2 chairs and you sit. And you're like, you're 4 inches from the table right next to you, and you got pigeons walking around underneath waiting for something to get dropped. I mean, that's a lot different than they would ever do here in the United States. They want you to come and they want you to eat with them, and it is very a family atmosphere at these restaurants.
Excellent. Well, this is a good place to take a quick pause here, take a quick break, to thank everyone once again for listening to Let's Talk. We appreciate your willingness to join us every week that we release an episode, and we definitely want to hear from you. Please do send us feedback on what you think on whether it's this topic or any topic we've discussed before at letstalk@sqpn.com. We also want to encourage you to check out some of our other podcasts. We got some great podcasts going on. One of them fits well with this topic. We've got Deborah and Sandra who are talking about their journey down the pilgrimage to the
Camino.
Thank you. Yes. I just blanked. I hate that when I do that. The Camino, walking through Spain and doing a walking pilgrimage through Spain. You can see that in the Pilgrim Life podcast that they're doing. Very interesting topic. Again, very interesting podcast or pilgrimage that I would love to do someday. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, new season of Doctor Who is starting, or has, by the time you hear this, the first episode will have aired. Yep. So we're pretty excited about that. Interested to see what the new season and the new Doctor and everything is going to hold. So you can hear all about that in our Secrets of Doctor Who podcast that Dom and I do with Jimmy Aiken. We always have a lot of fun doing those episodes, and I think we're all looking forward to getting some new episodes under our belt again, games, a new Doctor Who to talk about instead of looking back to, look forward at what's going on.
And one thing I want to pitch about that is, this is probably the biggest change in Doctor Who since the show came back in 2005. New showrunner, new special effects house even, and new locations. They're going to have all new villains and stuff. So there's going to be a lot to talk about, or there has been a lot to talk about, as I say.
And of course, the big news of the new Doctor being female, and of course the actors have all been male up to this point. So of course everybody's kind of interested in how that's going to play out. So please do check out our other podcasts. Again, the Pilgrim Life and Secrets of Doctor Who, and many others. We got Secrets of Star Trek as well that Dom, Jimmy, and I are doing. So lots to check out. Again, you can find all that at sqpn.com or your favorite podcatcher, iTunes, Google Play, and so on. So please do check those out.
I've definitely fallen behind because once the last cute Doctor morphed into the older guy, my daughter lost interest, and then I lost the person I got to watch it with. And once she finds out that it's a female Doctor, that'll really swear her off to, well, what's the point? Unless he has a cute companion, then maybe that will be someone she really likes. But I think it was the 11th Doctor, the last young guy.
Yeah. Yep. Matt Smith.
Matt Smith.
Yeah, he was great.
Capaldi.
Yeah, and the one before him was all the girls' favorites. That when he died, there was tears everywhere, or went away. I don't know if "died" is the correct term, but
regenerate is
regenerated. Yeah,
yes,
yeah. You'll have to listen to our podcast where we talk about the Doctor is my boyfriend as a problem.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
We will not have this problem now.
No.
So getting back into the pilgrimage, I want to talk more about your work doing pilgrimage. I noticed on your website that you've dedicated your pilgrimage to Saint Gemma, who I see behind you as well on your wall there. Why don't you tell us, first of all, about Saint Gemma and why you chose her as your patron saint?
It goes back to 1979, 1980. My first niece, my parents' first grandchild, she called my mother Gemma as a baby morphing of grandma. It just came out Gemma. And it stuck. My mother really liked it because she had a sister Gemma that taught her in school. And every grandchild, all 20 grandchildren, called my mother Gemma from that point on. That was her name. And when she passed away in 2007, I started looking into Saint Gemma. Now, I had seen her, around. I'd seen pictures of her on books and stuff, and so I knew there was a Saint Gemma, but I never really got into learning about her until after my mother passed away. And my mother passed away the night of Easter. It was April 8th was Easter morning, and I know she was alive at the beginning of Easter because she went to the vigil and I was there, and she got to bed after midnight. But she passed away that day, so it was on Easter. And when I first started looking into St. Gemma, I found out she passed away on Holy Saturday evening. So I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. And so I looked into her more and more, and as you guys can see behind me, I know the people in the podcast can't, but you can go to our website and you can find a link to the whole story that I had with Gemma and my experience, as well as a great website run by a guy who has a wonderful devotion to Saint Gemma, and all the good stuff is there, all her writings and different pictures and stuff. But it kind of developed there. And then when we went on our first pilgrimage in 2011, we were able to go to Lucca. And Lucca is where Gemma lived her whole life. She didn't travel around. She basically lived inside the walls of Lucca. And that's where she's entombed with Passionist sisters, taking care of the shrine. And we just had an incredible experience at the shrine. A gentleman offered to take us. We didn't know where he was taking us because he didn't really explain. He just started telling us about Gemma in Italian, but luckily we had a guy there with us who spoke Italian, was translating the whole walkway. And he took us to where Gemma first lived and where she first received the stigmata. We were in the room where she first received the stigmata. It was just a wonderful experience. And at that time, this was our first pilgrimage. We didn't have a pilgrimage apostolate company or anything. But when it came time that we actually decided we're going to do this, she was the obvious choice as our patron.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you can go to their website, takeapilgrimage.com. I love the name of the website.
Yeah, we wanted something easy to remember. I want to take a pilgrimage. Well, go to takeapilgrimage.com. And Saint Gemma she was born in 1878, and she is one of those saints that didn't live long. Very similar to Therese, who lived the same time and died at 24. Gemma died at 25 years old. She offered her life to the Lord because the family she was staying with after her parents had died, and she was staying with the Giannini family, which is another place I also got to visit a few years later after the first visit. And this was a mother who had a young baby among her many children, and she came down with cancer. And Gemma said, Lord, she has a baby and children, take me instead. The woman's cancer was cured, and Gemma died shortly after.
Oh, very good. Very, very interesting story. Yes, Saint, I'd heard of, I think many people have heard of her, but no one really knows who she is. So.
Yeah. She's amazing in detachment. The funny thing is, she's nothing like me. I mean, she's great at detachment. I'm horrible at detachment. She's just totally selfless. She was beautiful. Any picture you see of Gemma, she's like, wow, what a striking woman. But she pulled her hair back, wore nothing but black, obviously no makeup, didn't work. She still looked beautiful. She had marriage proposals that she refused. But I soon realized that, she was everything that I could struggle to be, so she's making up for me. She's saying, look at this poor guy, look at me, Lord, and I'm, will offer everything I did. She even went as far as to ask her spiritual director if she could ask Jesus to take away her sense of taste. And he didn't want to, but eventually he said, well, okay, not thinking that anything would come of it. But the Lord granted her wish and took away her sense of taste. So the last year and a half, 2 years of her life, she couldn't taste any food. Now, Dom, can you imagine asking for that?
An Italian who asked to take away your sense of taste. I mean, that is a supreme sacrifice.
I know it certainly would be for me. I can't imagine. Like, wow. So she, detachment was a great spiritual gift that Jesus, and she would talk with Jesus. She would talk with the Blessed Mother and her guardian angel. St. Padre Pio had a great devotion to her. Because not only, they had the similar relationship with guardian angels, but they both had the stigmata. So he had a devotion to her. She was canonized in 1940, and he, lived his life kind of shortly after that into the 60s. So he had a devotion to her. I highly recommend becoming a friend of St. Gemma. She kind of chose me, with how it all came about, but... my wife and I both have a very strong devotion to Gemma. Our daughter chose the name Gemma for her confirmation name, so she's been a wonderful heavenly friend for us for a long time.
Oh, wonderful. Well, now would be a good time, I think, kind of to switch gears a little bit. We talked about your pilgrimage work, but you also have a day job. You don't get to go bounce around the world all the time. You have to work for a living like the rest of us. Your title is Director of Catechesis and Evangelization. Well, tell us about that. I mean, what do you do as a Director of Catechesis and Evangelization?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think that there was directors that had evangelization included in their title until the new evangelization started becoming something with John Paul and then Pope Benedict, continuing this idea that the whole church need to be re-evangelized. We need to go out into the pews and turn these people into disciples of Jesus, intentional disciples, as Sherry Wendell's book talks about. The evangelization aspect, for those who might not know the distinction between that and catechesis, evangelization is kind of becoming a friend of Jesus. Let me tell you about him, and tell you about my experience with him, and what a wonderful Savior and Lord he is, and introduce somebody to them and get them to be drawn to him. Hopefully the Holy Spirit then is working and they respond to that, and once they fall in love with the Lord. Through evangelization, the catechesis then can begin in earnest. Obviously, there's a little bit of catechesis in the evangelization aspect, but the real catechesis comes when, because they've, fallen in love with Christ, they now want to learn all they can about him, and then the catechesis aspect comes in. So everything from the faith formation aspect for the kids in 1st through 10th grade that I'm in charge of, to RCIA and other Bible studies and opportunities for people to learn. We also do things like conferences. We have a conference coming up on the 13th with Dr. David Anders. He's going to talk about discipleship. So I think that there's going to be a lot of evangelization aspects to what he does on that day. We have a Lenten retreat. That's a really evangelization aspect to kind of reinvigorate people to want to once again kind of renew their faith life and take it more seriously. And then, of course, I do classes, Bible studies, and things to catechize the adults who want to come. And most of the website that we have at Sacred Heart, sacredheartshrine.org, is designed by me with the idea of evangelizing and catechizing. I have a blog on there, things like that.
Oh, nice. There's a phrase I heard a while ago, and I at least in my experience as a priest, it's very true that we have catechized, but we haven't evangelized. Is that something that you see in your work?
Oh, most definitely. That's a huge problem, and I think, not to. When you look at the last 100 years of the church, we had an evangelization in families from the greatest generation, going on that happened. They evangelized, maybe not always perfectly, but the idea was they taught their kids and expected of their kids and instilled in their children the importance of having Jesus in their lives, the importance of making the church an important part of their lives. And after Vatican II in the 60s and things kind of changed a lot, you really just had parents kind of, well, we're going to drop them off at religious ed, and, you guys do everything. And you have teachers in a religious ed society setting or faith formation who have a lot of unevangelized children that they're trying to teach. And, they couldn't be more disinterested than anything else. It's just, math, history, whatever else that they're forced to learn, this isn't really all that interesting to them. And usually it's because they haven't been evangelized. And that's probably because their parents haven't been evangelized either. There was a time in the 70s and 80s when you had the grandparents were the greatest generation, and they were at least kind of moving it along. And yes, you got to do it with your kids. And my wife said, she received so much from her grandparents when it came to the faith. But now the grandparents are also the ones who went through just the simple, Sunday school, and that was about all they got. And, the faith wasn't a real big deal for them. And so, we have several generations of this unevangelized people that need to be re-evangelized and have a fire for Christ awakened in them.
Sure, absolutely. And it's a difficult work, because I think there's a lot of people who, they call themselves Christians, they call themselves Catholics, they think they know what it means to live that. And you look at their lives and go, no, you really don't. You don't. You're parroting all the tropes you see in the culture. You're saying everything that's not Christian. You're living not as a Christian, and it's obvious in your life, but you don't see that. And it's, how do we break through that? I'm a Christian. We're almost, I guess the way I've heard it expressed is we're inoculated against Christianity.
Yeah.
How do we break through that?
Our pastor has this, a great way of putting it. And it's similar to different things I've heard, but you have your immature Christians, and they're the ones who may go to mass on Christmas and Easter. They might be prayed for before meals, but the rest of their life is kind of devoid of any relationship with God. They don't have Jesus in the workplace. They don't have Jesus in their relationships with other people. They don't have a personal relationship with it all. But if you encounter Christ through your prayer, you become to a mature Catholic faith, where you then start to realize that Jesus can and should be a part of everything. He should influence my work. He should influence my recreation. He should influence how I relate to my family and friends. He's every single part of that. And then that Christian is then moved into a perfect Catholic, not perfect in the sense of there's nothing there to fix, but that's when suffering enters in. When they're willing to suffer for Christ. They look at things and say, well, I have the choice of doing the right thing or this suffering, and I'm going to choose the suffering. And then that really transformed them with a real love of Christ. That's when that's the real school of the Holy Spirit, when they learn to have that kind of deep relationship. But unfortunately, most Catholics that I've encountered, at least, are in that immature, faith. Mm-hmm. Even if they go to mass every Sunday, they are kind of just going through the motions, jumping through the hoops. But to ask them about their relationship with Christ, you would get kind of a deer in the headlights kind of stare, and not really sure what they're talking about, or they think they have one because they show up at mass, and because they help out with bingo or the fundraisers and stuff, which is all well and good, but you can't just do that and not actually have a personal relationship with Christ.
This is where I really appreciate Sherry Waddell's work in forming intentional disciples, because she lays
you can
out.
See a lot of what I'm saying that comes from her, and looking for intentional disciples, and that's when you go from the mature to the immature to the mature, and then the missionary disciples are when you start to suffer for Christ, and you start to get your own disciples. You get people that you're kind of discipling into the faith, and you're helping along because of what you went through.
And this kind of wraps back to Saint Gemma there, talking about her life. Very
exactly,
much you see that in her life, and many saints as well. Saint Padre Pio mentioned earlier, Saint Francis. We had the feast of Saint Francis last week. Same thing. That you see this in their lives, that they literally gave their lives to Christ and were willing to suffer with him.
Saint Francis teaches us that the most important thing we can do for the church is our own sanctification. So, St. Francis rebuilt the church by trying to be as close to Christ and be the best disciple of Christ he could possibly be, and he transformed the church. He had, followers from all over Europe that wanted to be like him because they were drawn to his holiness. And he wasn't, he wasn't a priest. He wasn't necessarily, he was a good speaker, but it wasn't like, he had a podcast or something and to reach all these people. His holiness was just so, attractive. That's what Matthew Kelly would say. There's nothing more attractive than holiness, and they were just drawn to him. And the main thing he did was make sure that he was as close to Christ as he possibly could be, and rid himself of anything that would get in the way of his relationship with Christ.
Well, excellent. Excellent. And I think that's a good place to kind of wrap up our conversation here. Great information and great stuff. We'll move on to our pick of the week. I know Dom mentioned to you we do pick of the week. So if you're ready, we let the guest go first.
Well, it's funny. My one pick is if anyone is in the Buffalo or near the Buffalo area, like I said, Dr. David Anders is coming on the 13th to the Sacred Heart of Jesus Shrine. It's on Genesee Street in Bowmansville. You can go to our website and check that out. It's going to be a really good day. It's lunch is provided, and you're going to get 2 talks and a Q&A by Dr. Anders, a lot of other stuff as well. And I don't know if the pick of the day has to be faith related, but I just saw the movie. I just saw the movie Venom last night. Have either one of you seen it yet?
No, not yet. I'm interested.
Yeah, it's really cool. I didn't expect it to be as funny as it is, but the banter and the inner struggle between Venom once he takes over Eddie's. He doesn't really take over Eddie's body. They just kind of have this relationship where Venom is kind of like, you're a wimp and you got to do these things, and Eddie's just kind of not real sure about himself, and it's it's just played so well. The actor's name escapes me, but he's one of my favorites. You know who I'm talking about, Dom, or does it escape you as well? He played Bane and Batman, and he played a Star Trek role, and he's
Tom
just
Hardy.
Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy, one of my favorite actors. I love the voices he does. He did a really compelling voice for Bane in the Batman movie, and he does the voice for Venom too, which I didn't realize it was him because it didn't have the same accent that it usually comes across with. So it was really well, and there was a lot of scary moments, as you can imagine, with with the way Venom is. But it's a popcorn movie. It's not some deep, compelling, movie. It's a typical Marvel. This was done by Sony, but it's a good popcorn movie to enjoy. But if you're easily startled or frightened by a lot of action, no. But if you like the kind of stuff, I enjoyed it with my daughter and her friend. We went out and saw it last night.
He's sort of a super anti-hero, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Venom kind of goes from, we're here to kind of take over your planet because, we need things to eat, to kind of falling in love with the people. And you realize, no, I like this place, and I actually want to defend it instead of, take it over. So it's a cool little story, and I think it's really well done.
Cool.
Excellent. What do you have for our pick, Dom?
I have a book this week by one of my favorite newer authors. Her name is Naomi Novik. And if you're familiar with it, she did a series of books. Her first books were the Temeraire dragon stories that took place. It imagined an alternate world where in the Age of Sail, the Age of Master and Commander, the early 1800s, that there were dragons, intelligent dragons that were tame and were part of culture, and in fact used by militaries as an air force in that time. So she had this series of 13 books that she finished. That's not my recommendation. I'm just going on and on about it because I really liked it. But my recommendation is her latest book, which is called Spinning Silver. And it's really cool because the setting is probably like Russia, or at least the Slavic countries, maybe like Russia or Latvia or something like that. It involves a czar, but it really involves this Jewish family, and you don't really see a lot of Jewish Judaism in high fantasy fiction, which is what this is. It's a sort of retelling of the girl who spins straw into gold, Rumpelstiltskin. It's sort of almost a retelling of that, but it features a different kind of magical creature than Rumpelstiltskin, but something called the Starrick, which is a sort of elf-like creatures who are cold weather creatures. They live in a realm of cold and winter, and then there's a fire demon, and it's told in first person from the point of view of mainly three different women who are very different. One is the daughter of a duke, one is a daughter of a Jewish moneylender, and one is a young peasant woman. And how they interact, their paths cross. It's very it's complex without being complicated and really enjoyable. I really enjoy it. My wife, she's quite picky when it comes to books. She likes these, but she was an English professor, so she's sort of picky when it comes to books. She really liked it, so that's a good sign. So I recommend it. Spinning Silver. I have my grandfather on my mother's side was Jewish, and so and he was from this area of the world, from Russia. So I had an affinity for the topic to begin with, but it's really a good story. So I recommend it. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik.
Interesting. I have to check those out. I have to check her out. I hadn't heard of her before. Interesting.
Oh yeah. She's got another book called Uprooted, which was the one just before this as well, which was really good too.
Excellent. My pick of the week is something, it's an app that I've started to use. It actually came out of our priest assembly this week. It's called Mile IQ, and it's a Microsoft product. Terrible. No, it's an app for both iOS and Android. It's on both of them. And it's a mileage tracking. For those who don't know, priests are really strange when it comes to tax purposes. We are employees as far as the IRS is concerned, but self-employed, and we don't get FICA automatically withdrawn, and it's a mess.
Right.
But the advantage of this is we can take self-employment tax deductions on our travel. So we drive our own, like, for example, I own my vehicles. I own them completely. The parish doesn't own them. They help pay for them, but I own them. And so any miles I put on for business purposes is tax deductible.
Well, and folks should know, if you don't know, Father Cory lives in Malta, Montana,
so we put miles on our cars,
which is about in the middle of nowhere from everything.
Well, we're not the middle of nowhere. That's a town 70 miles east of here is officially the middle of nowhere.
They're not even close
Montana.
to the middle of nowhere. Yeah,
we're close. But so we put a lot of miles on our vehicles, and we have to keep track of that. And previously, I would just take, okay, here's how many miles, 20,000, 30,000 miles in a year. And here's a certain percentage of what the diocese says I'm responsible for. So 10% of my miles are personal, 90% are business. And that works out pretty close, honestly. I generally tend to drive a lot more miles for work than I do for fun. This helps because you basically you have it running on your phone. It keeps track of every time you drive, it pops up. Okay, you've got 2 drives to categorize. You swipe left if it's personal. You swipe right if it's business. You keep swiping right. You can say, what business purpose? Was this for a meal? Was this for a temporary event? Was it, whatever. So it's just real quick and easy to look at them. You can say, okay, yeah, this one was a personal trip. This was business. And you swipe back and forth. And it's nice, too, because it shows you how many miles you've driven in the month. And it shows you what your deduction will be for those miles. And everything. And then at the end of the month, end of the year, you can do a report of I have this many miles, this many miles, that. And also for personal, you can also say this is medical. By the way, medical mileage is tax deductible, things like that. So very much if you're in that position like me, where you've got a business, you're using personal vehicle for work purposes, something where you need to keep track of mileage. This is really an easy one. I've used other tools, and this is probably the easiest I've found. So it's MileIQ by Microsoft, and it's mileiq.com is where you find it.
And I bet if it, since it's a Microsoft product, it works. It integrates really well with Excel. So,
yeah, you can export, all kinds of good stuff. There's cool. Web dashboard and all that. So, yeah, absolutely, it would work great with all those different tools. Well, thank you both for coming on, and another great episode. Mike, where can people find you, or find out what you're doing, whether it is for pilgrimages or as catechesis and evangelization?
Yeah, you can go to takeapilgrimage.com, as we said, takeapilgrimage.com. And right on the first page you see, there's a link to how does my Catholic group, whether it's maybe a youth group or a high school, or maybe it's a specific group at a parish or your whole parish. You really don't want to limit, if possible, who you'll accept to go, because if you get 15 or more paying people, your priest, yourself, and your spouse or your friend all go for free. So you're just trying to get 15 paying people, and then you get a free pilgrimage to Rome. Do that. And if you go to, actually, that same website has a link to my blog, which is on our parish website where I work, so you'll then be into our parish website as well. So, and all my emails and everything are all right in there, and how to contact me.
Oh, excellent. And Dom, where people find you?
Well, you can find me all over sqpn.com. I'm on a bunch of our podcasts there, and but if you want to find my personal stuff, you can go to bettnet.com, bettnet.com.
Excellent. And again, I'm Father Cory Sticha. You can find me at my personal website, frcory.org, where I post my homilies. Find my Facebook page, Father Cory Sticha. That's my public page where I post stuff. You can usually find me there the easiest. And of course, you can find me on Secrets of Doctor Who, Secrets of Star Trek, other podcasts that happen to pop up on once in a while here at sqpn.com as well. Once again, if you have feedback for this episode or any other episode of Let's Talk, you can send that feedback to letstalk@sqpn.com. Thank you once again for listening. I hope you'll join us next week, and God bless.